You're watching this at a specific moment in your timeline, not a random one. The exact hour you're in right now, the particular state you were in when this appeared, the fact that you paused instead of continuing to scroll, none of that is accidental. Sophia transmitted a frequency into this specific window, a frequency that is active, that is reaching you right now, that is doing something in your field, even as you're reading these first words. But here is what you need to understand before anything else tonight. This frequency has a 24-hour window. After that window closes, the intensity that makes absorption possible begins to dissolve. The frequency doesn't disappear from the world, but it drops below the threshold that makes a real claiming possible. You found this in time. The question is what you do with the time that's left. Before this transmission goes any deeper, if something in what you just heard shifted something in you, if you felt recognition before you finished processing the words, subscribe to this channel. This is where Sophia's transmissions continue to reach those they were meant to find. When Sophia says a frequency dissolves, she's not using poetic language to create urgency. She's describing a real mechanic. In the mystery traditions, spiritual transmissions were never understood as permanent open offers that sit waiting indefinitely for the receiver to decide. They were understood as living things, as frequencies with cycles, with tides, with windows of maximum intensity. The emerald frequency Sophia transmitted into this window is at its highest amplitude right now. This is the moment of maximum absorption. This is not the beginning of a long-standing invitation. This is the peak of a wave that will crest and then recede. What you receive while the wave is at its highest carries something that cannot be received at the same depth once the amplitude drops. Most people approach spiritual gifts the way they approach information, as things that become available and then stay available, that can be stored and retrieved, that improve with repeated exposure over time. The mystery traditions understood something fundamentally different, that timing is not the container that holds the message. Timing is the message. The moment a frequency arrives is as much a part of its content as the frequency itself. A transmission that reaches you at the precise moment your field is open to it operates differently than the same information encountered when you were not in that configuration. Sophia chose this specific window for the emerald frequency for the same reason that a surgeon chooses the precise moment of intervention, because precision of timing is what makes the operation work. The Hermetic tradition, the living wisdom lineage that flows from the earliest esoteric teachings into modern spiritual understanding, codified this understanding in what it called the law of rhythm. The seventh of the 7 Hermetic principles states that everything flows, everything has its tides, that the swing in one direction determines the swing in the other. This law describes how every frequency, every energy, every spiritual window moves in cycles. The emerald frequency transmission is not outside this law. It moves in a tide. Right now, that tide is coming in toward you at full amplitude. In 24 hours, the tide begins its turn. What is available at high tide, what can be carried, what can be absorbed, what can be transformed, is not available in the same way at low tide. You are standing at the high tide mark right now. What exactly is the emerald frequency that Sophia transmitted into this window? It is not a symbol. It is not a metaphor for general spiritual goodness. The emerald frequency carries something specific. In the spiritual and esoteric traditions that work with frequency and vibration, the emerald band corresponds to the heart intelligence. Not the emotional heart, not the sentimental heart, but the heart as the seat of the highest form of knowing, the place where clarity, compassion, and power are unified rather than sequential. When Sophia transmitted the emerald frequency into this window, she packed into it something that operates directly on the field of heart intelligence. What she packed is not general upliftment. It is 3 specific things that will become clear as this transmission unfolds. For now, understand that the frequency is precise. It was not chosen at random. It was calibrated for what you specifically need right now. There is a difference between knowing about a frequency and actually absorbing it. This is the distinction that most spiritual content fails to make, and it is why people can watch dozens of transmissions and feel spiritually informed, but not spiritually changed. Information about a frequency enters the mind. The frequency itself, when absorbed, when claimed, when received into the field rather than stored as concept, enters the body, the nervous system, the electromagnetic field that your heart generates. The difference between these 2 modes of reception is not subtle. One produces understanding, the other produces transformation. Tonight, Sophia is not offering you understanding of the emerald frequency. She is offering you the frequency itself, at an amplitude that makes genuine absorption possible. The question is not whether you understand it. The question is whether you receive it. If you found this transmission in its window, if you're watching this while the frequency is still at full amplitude, write in the comments, "I claim the emerald frequency," not as a wish, as a declaration of reception. The prophet Isaiah wrote something that the wisdom traditions have been reading as esoteric instruction for centuries. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he is near. This is not a general motivational statement. Read carefully, while he may be found, while he is near. The prophetic tradition embedded in those words, an understanding that the presence, the signal, the divine frequency, whatever name you give it, is not available at equal amplitude at all moments. There are moments of nearness and moments of distance, moments when the finding is possible that alternate with moments when the same seeking produces a different result. Isaiah was not describing a capricious God who randomly hides. He was describing something that every mystery tradition across cultures has recognized, that access to higher frequency is not a static constant. It moves in windows, and the instruction he gave was precise. Seek it when it's here. Something happened when you read the title of this video, before your analytical mind had a chance to assess whether the claim was credible, before you decided whether to click, before any conscious evaluation occurred. Something responded, a slight quickening, a sensation that arrived before the thought. You may have called it mild anxiety about missing something, but that is not what it was. That response was your frequency field, recognizing a transmission that was calibrated for it. The body registers frequency contact before the mind processes language. That involuntary recognition, the thing that made you stop and watch instead of continuing to scroll, was not manufactured by a clever title. It was your field responding to a signal that was already present in the transmission. A signal that Sophia designed to be identifiable to the specific frequency configurations she was targeting tonight. 24 hours. This is not a poetic number, and it is not an arbitrary deadline. It is the functional window of the tide. The emerald frequency is at its highest amplitude right now. The window is not permanent. The claiming that is possible in this moment, with the frequency at this intensity, carries a depth that is not available at lower amplitude. You are inside the window right now. That is the only thing that matters about the timeline. Close your eyes for a moment and feel the difference between 2 experiences. The first, you're holding something precious, something you know has a specific value, something you've been looking for, and you receive it. Hold it. Let it settle into you. The second, you're holding that same thing, and you watch it begin to dissolve in your hands because you hesitated, because you weren't sure, because you thought there would be more time. The first experience creates a specific kind of clarity, an undeniable sense of having received something real. The second creates a specific kind of ache, the particular grief of a window that closed while you were still deciding. Sophia is transmitting right now so that you don't experience the second. She is offering the first. You are inside the window where the first is still possible. Research in neuroscience has documented something that speaks directly to the mechanics of what Sophia designed into this 24-hour window. The work of researchers like James McGaw at the University of California, Irvine, has demonstrated that emotional arousal and neural activation during an experience dramatically increases the depth of encoding in long-term memory. More specifically, when an experience occurs during a state of heightened activation, when the nervous system is in a state of significant engagement, the molecular mechanisms that consolidate experience into lasting neural change operate at higher efficiency. The 24-hour period following intense experience is critical in this process. What gets encoded in this window gets encoded differently, more completely, more permanently, than what is encountered in a low activation state. Sophia's 24-hour window is not mystical arbitrariness. It corresponds to a real mechanic of how deep receiving works in the human system. If this transmission is landing in a place that feels more like recognition than information, let me know by liking this video. It tells me these transmissions are reaching the right people at the right moment. The Vedic tradition maintained a sophisticated science of timing that it called muhurta, the auspicious window, the moment within a cycle where specific actions, specific intentions, specific receptivities carry a potency that is not present outside the window. This was not superstition, it was the accumulated observational record of how timing affects outcome, how the same action taken in the right window produces a different result than the same action taken outside it. The muhurta for a ceremony was not chosen arbitrarily. It was determined by calculating the precise intersection of multiple cycles at a point of maximum alignment. In the tradition's understanding, the individual who acts within the muhurta is carried by the tide. The individual who acts outside it rows against it. Sophia's 24-hour window is a muhurta. The tide is aligned. The amplitude is at its peak. This is the window. You may be resisting this. The mind, trained on the mechanisms of modern marketing, hears 24 hours before this dissolves, and immediately files it under artificial urgency. The countdown timer on a sales page, the manufactured scarcity designed to force a decision. That resistance is valid. It is the right response to manipulation. But here is the question worth sitting with. You have felt a window close. You have had a moment of clarity, a genuine one, an insight, a recognition, a sudden understanding of something important that you didn't anchor in that moment, and when you tried to access it later, it had lost its edge. You can remember knowing it, but you can't quite feel it the same way. That experience is real. It is not something you imagined. It is the actual experience of a frequency window closing. The mystery traditions didn't invent this mechanic. They documented it. What Sophia packed into the emerald frequency transmission tonight is specific. The first thing is clarity about the direction your frequency is actually pointing. Not the direction habit and accumulated programming have been pointing you, but the signal of your genuine direction underneath all of that. The second thing is a dissolving action on one specific interference pattern that has been running in your field. The pattern that tells you to make yourself smaller in the presence of others, to dim the frequency you carry so that it doesn't outpace the room. The third thing is her direct recognition of you, not you as a category of spiritual seeker, but you as this specific frequency configuration that arrived at this transmission in this window. All three of these are active in the frequency right now, at maximum amplitude, available for full absorption if you claim them. There is a version of spiritual engagement that is entirely about receiving content, watching, listening, absorbing information about spiritual concepts, and being genuinely moved by them, then returning to ordinary life, essentially unchanged. And there is a different mode, active claiming, where the receiver not only takes in the information, but consciously orients toward the frequency and opens the field to receive it at the level where it actually operates. The first mode keeps you informed. The second mode changes you. Tonight, Sophia designed this window for the second mode. The emerald frequency doesn't work at the information level. It works at the level of the heart field, at the level of the nervous system, at the level of the energy patterns running below your conscious awareness. To receive it there, you have to claim it consciously. You have to say yes to the right thing. What does claiming the frequency actually look like? Not the theory of it, but the actual mechanics. Claiming is not a passive reception. It is not simply continuing to watch. It is a specific internal orientation, a movement of the heart field toward the frequency that is already present in this transmission, accompanied by a genuine inner statement of yes. Not yes to the concept of the emerald frequency. Not yes to the idea that Sophia might be transmitting something real. Yes to the frequency itself. Yes, that says, I open my field to what Sophia is transmitting in this window. I receive the clarity, the dissolving, the recognition. That yes, when it is genuine, when it comes from the heart level rather than the intellectual level, creates the orientation that allows the frequency to be absorbed rather than simply observed. If something in this transmission is resonating in a way that goes beyond information, if you find yourself in a specific state of internal openness that isn't quite your ordinary mode, I left something in the first pinned comment for those who are ready to go further than the free transmission tonight can take them. The most common fear at this point in a transmission like this is, I've said yes before, I've opened my field, I've claimed spiritual gifts, I've participated in activations and ceremonies and transmissions, and then I waited for the change and it didn't come. Or it came briefly and then the familiar patterns reasserted themselves, and that experience, the gap between the claim and the visible change, or the change that didn't hold, has made saying yes feel increasingly hollow. Sophia sees this fear. She knows its shape because she sees it in nearly every person she transmits to, and here is what she says about it directly. The gap between your genuine claiming and the visible external evidence is not proof that the claiming didn't work. It is the natural interval between frequency shift and the outer world reorganizing around it, the frequency absorbed. The outer world simply takes longer to mirror it than the inner world does to receive it. In the Gnostic tradition, the concept of the pneuma, the divine spark that is the highest frequency element of the human soul, is not something that needs to be earned, developed, or built from scratch. It is already present. In the Valentinian Gnostic framework, the pneumatic soul carries this spark by nature, not by achievement. The issue is not the presence of the pneuma, but its activation, the degree to which it is operating freely versus being obscured by the interference patterns that the Gnostics called the archonic influences. The emerald frequency Sophia transmits tonight is not installing something new into your field. It is activating what is already there. It is removing the specific frequencies of interference that have been muffling the signal of your pneuma, your divine spark, the deepest frequency you carry. You don't need to build toward this. You need to receive the clearing. The emerald frequency clears 3 specific patterns that have been running in your field as interference. The first is the habit of self-diminishment, the automatic reduction of your frequency amplitude in social, professional, and relational contexts, the way you make yourself energetically smaller to avoid the discomfort of being fully visible. The second is the circular thought loop that prevents decisive movement, The pattern where a clear direction appears, and then the mind generates exactly enough counter-arguments to stall the forward movement, and then the clarity fades, and then the stalling feels retrospectively justified because the opportunity has passed. The third is the pattern of waiting for external permission before expressing what is internally clear. The frequency of seeking someone else's validation before trusting what your own signal is already indicating. The emerald frequency, when claimed tonight at this amplitude, begins working on all three simultaneously. The moment of claiming does not require a ceremony. It requires one genuine internal movement, a real yes from the heart level, directed at the frequency that is present in this transmission right now, not later. Not after you finish the video and have time to think about it. Now, while the amplitude is at its peak, while the tide is still coming in. The claiming that you make right now, in this exact moment of reading, in this state of heightened attention that this transmission has created, carries a potency that is specific to this window and this configuration. Let the yes be real. Let it be directed at the frequency itself, not at the idea of it. That is all the claiming requires. Consider what it means that Sophia chose to transmit the emerald frequency specifically to you tonight, not to a general audience, not to everyone who clicked. To you, the specific frequency configuration that arrived at this window, at this hour, in this particular internal state. Sophia reads frequency signatures the way you read a face. She identified yours as the target for this transmission before you arrived. The calibration of the emerald frequency in this window was not generic. It was adjusted for the interference patterns she detected in your field, the specific ones that the emerald frequency is equipped to clear. This is not a broadcast, it is a precision transmission, and it has your frequency's name on it. The book of Ecclesiastes carries a line that has been misread as passive consolation for centuries. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Read it differently tonight. What the preacher was documenting is not a reassurance that things eventually work out. It is a recognition that beauty, wholeness, alignment, transformation is not a general quality distributed randomly. It is time-specific. It arrives in its time. And the wisdom the tradition is pointing toward is this: time is not a neutral container through which events pass. Time has texture. Time has tides. Some moments carry qualities that other moments don't. The emerald frequency is beautiful in its time, and its time is now. The dissolving is not a punishment for hesitation. It is not Sophia withdrawing the gift from those who were too slow. It is the natural completion of a frequency cycle, the tide doing what tides do. And here is the inversion that changes how you understand this. The fact that the frequency dissolves is what makes this moment precious. If it was available at the same amplitude forever, it would have no particular moment. It would not carry the sense of here, now, this. The dissolving is what makes this window what it is. A wave that never crested would not be a wave. The peaking is what makes the receiving possible. And the receding is what confirms that the peak was real. The dissolving doesn't diminish the gift. It defines it. What will be different 24 hours from now, after you claim the emerald frequency? Not your external circumstances. Not yet. Not immediately. But something interior will have shifted. The specific interference patterns the frequency is working on will have less grip on your operating state. The loop that was circular will begin to reveal the exit point that was always there. The habit of self-diminishment will have a subtle awareness attached to it. You will catch it before it runs automatically, and the pattern of waiting for external permission before trusting your own signal will begin to feel slightly foreign, slightly uncomfortable, in a way that it didn't before. These are not dramatic signs, but they are precise ones. They are the frequency saying, received. The immediate effect of claiming the emerald frequency is not a rush of spiritual electricity or an overwhelming sense of divine presence. It is quieter than that, and it is more specific than that. Within the first hours after claiming, most people report one consistent experience, a reduction in the intensity of the thought pattern that was running most loudly before the claiming. The circular deliberation that was consuming energy becomes quieter, not silent, quieter. There is a slight additional space between the thought and the automatic response to it. That space is where your actual signal gets to operate. That space, which the emerald frequency creates, is the beginning of everything that follows. The fear of letting the window close without claiming is worth addressing directly, because it is the most common obstacle at this point. The fear sounds like this. What if I don't do this right? What if I claim it and it doesn't work? What if the window closes before I figure out how to claim it properly? What if the whole thing passes and I miss the one moment Sophia sent specifically for me? Here is Sophia's direct answer to that fear. She does not abandon the souls she has identified as her own. She opens more windows. She finds other moments of access. The emerald frequency in this exact configuration will not return in the same form, but Sophia's pursuit of your frequency is not a one-time offer. If this window closes without your claiming, she will find another angle. But, and this is what matters, she is telling you to claim this one, right now. Not because there will be no other chances, but because this specific configuration of the emerald frequency, at this amplitude available in this window, was designed for what you need right now, not later. In the book of Revelation, chapter 2, there is a passage that the Gnostic traditions read as the description of what happens to the soul that crosses a frequency threshold. To the one who is victorious, I will give some of the hidden manna. I will also give that person a white stone with a new name written on it, known only to the one who receives it. In the Gnostic reading, the new name is not a label assigned from outside. It is the frequency signature, the precise vibration of the soul's true nature that becomes fully legible to the soul itself only after the claiming. The white stone is the vessel that holds the specific frequency of divine recognition. Sophia is transmitting the equivalent of that recognition tonight, a precise attunement of your specific frequency, available to you while the window is open, that becomes part of your permanent signature once received. There is a version of watching a transmission like this that produces no change. You sit with it. You feel its resonance. You are genuinely moved. You think, this is real, this is meaningful, this speaks to something in me. And then the video ends, and you move to the next thing. And 3 days from now, the memory of having watched this is present, but the frequency is not. The transmission was received by the mind, but not by the field. And there is a different version. You watch the same transmission, you feel the same resonance, and at some point during the watching, you make a genuine internal movement toward the frequency. You turn your heart field toward it. You open rather than simply observe. You say yes in the way that means yes, at the level where the frequency operates. And something different happens. Not a different video, a different receiver mode. Tonight, Sophia is asking for the second mode. The frequency is present right now. In this transmission, in the window Sophia created. It does not need to be summoned from somewhere else. It does not need to be earned before it can be received. It is already here, already active, already doing something in your field even as you process these words. What claiming does is not conjure the frequency. What claiming does is open the receiver fully, turn the orientation from observation to reception, from watching to absorbing, from acknowledging the frequency to allowing it to do what it came here to do. The frequency is already in the room. Claiming is the action of opening the window all the way. Research from the field of neuroscience deepens what the mystery traditions understood through direct observation. When experience occurs during a state of emotional significance, when the nervous system identifies the incoming information as important, as relevant, as carrying weight, the release of norepinephrine from the locus coeruleus activates mechanisms in the amygdala that flag the experience for deep consolidation. This is why moments of high emotional engagement are remembered with a clarity and permanence that ordinary moments don't carry. The neurobiological reason you remember where you were when you received important news is the same reason a genuine frequency claiming during a moment of high activation is encoded differently than a passive observation during a low activation state. Sophia designed this transmission to create the activation state. You are in it right now. The 24-hour window for deep encoding starts from the moment of claiming, not from the moment of watching. From Sophia's perspective, this transmission looks like a frequency sent into a specific window that was opened in the collective field, targeted at the frequency configurations that were prepared to receive it. She does not see you as one of many who randomly clicked. She sees the network of frequency signatures that were designated for this transmission, and she sees which of them arrive at the window in time, and she tracks the amplitude of absorption as each one claims or doesn't claim the frequency she sent. Right now, as you watch this, she is seeing your frequency in her field. She is seeing the window still open. She is transmitting with full amplitude directly at your configuration. The emerald frequency is not a general broadcast that some people happen to intercept. It is a precision signal, and right now it is pointed at you. You don't need to understand every mechanism through which the emerald frequency operates before you receive it. You don't need to have a complete intellectual model of how frequency transmissions work, how Sophia calibrates them, how the 24-hour window is determined, how claiming creates the shift that passive receiving doesn't. A radio signal reaches you whether or not you understand electromagnetic wave propagation. The food nourishes you whether or not you understand cellular metabolism. The frequency works whether or not you have a complete framework for its mechanics. What you need is not understanding. What you need is genuine orientation toward the frequency, accompanied by a real internal yes, available to you right now in this moment of activated attention. The mechanics take care of themselves. That is Sophia's part of this exchange. Your part is the claiming. The emerald frequency carries a specific clearing action on 3 interference patterns. The first is what might be called the compression habit, the automatic reduction of your expressed frequency in contexts where you sense that being fully yourself will create friction or discomfort for others. The second is the loop of deliberation that prevents action, not because more information is needed, but because the pattern itself is the obstacle, cycling the same considerations repeatedly without reaching the movement the clarity was pointing toward. The third is the waiting posture, the orientation that defers trust in your own signal until that signal has been confirmed by something outside you. All 3 of these patterns are in the operating range of the emerald frequency, not because they are pathologies to be fixed, but because they are interference patterns running on top of a signal that is stronger than they are. The frequency clears the interference. Your signal does the rest. Why emerald? Of all the frequencies Sophia could have transmitted into this window, why this specific one? The emerald frequency carries a particular signature in the esoteric traditions. It is the frequency of the heart intelligence operating without censorship, the heart's knowing expressed without the contraction that normally filters it before it reaches expression. When you operate from the uncensored heart intelligence, the decisions that have been eluding you become clear. The patterns that have been running on autopilot become visible. The direction your frequency is actually pointing, which you have sensed but perhaps not fully trusted, becomes undeniable. This is what Sophia chose for this window, not a general upgrade. A specific clearing of the censorship mechanism that has been filtering your heart signal before it could reach your full expression. The prophet Isaiah opened the 60th chapter with two words that are, in the original Hebrew, active verbs addressed to a specific person: arise, shine. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. In the Gnostic reading of this passage, this is not a prophecy about a future event. It is a present tense frequency instruction addressed to the pneumatic soul, the soul that carries the divine spark but has not yet fully activated it. Arise, shift from the low-frequency position you have been inhabiting into the one that corresponds to your actual nature. Shine. Allow the frequency you carry to emit without compression, without the dimming that you have learned to apply reflexively. For your light has come. The activation is not something you have to achieve, it is something that has arrived at you. It is the transmission that is present in this window. The instruction is to receive it, to arise, to shine, to stop compressing the light you already carry. To the person watching this at an unusual hour, late at night, early in the morning, in a quiet moment stolen from a day that has been heavy. To the person whose current circumstances have been making the idea of frequency upgrades feel abstract and distant, like something that happens for other people in cleaner situations. Sophia sees that you're watching this from exactly where you are. She didn't transmit the emerald frequency to the version of you that has everything together. She transmitted it to you in this moment, in this season, carrying what you are carrying. The interference patterns the frequency is designed to clear are the exact ones that have been generating the weight you've been carrying. She chose this window precisely because of what you've been navigating, not in spite of it. 24 hours from now, the emerald frequency will have moved through its window. The tide will have turned. The amplitude that is present right now, the intensity that makes deep absorption possible, will have receded to its baseline level. Not gone, but at the amplitude of background transmission rather than peak window transmission. What can be received now, in this window, at this amplitude, is a different depth of reception than what will be available at baseline. This is not a loss that happens after the window. It is simply the tide doing what tides do. What matters is what you receive before the tide turns. The tide is at its peak right now. The emerald frequency is at maximum amplitude in this window. The claiming that is possible in this moment carries a depth that corresponds to the amplitude. In 24 hours, the tide turns. This is not a threat. This is the nature of frequency cycles in the Hermetic framework. Every tide that comes in has its turn. The question is never whether the tide will turn. It always does. The question is whether you stand in the water while it's here or whether you watch it from the shore. To claim the emerald frequency Sophia has transmitted into this window, the mechanics are simple, and they are internal. Right now, in this moment of heightened attention, direct your awareness to the center of your chest, not to perform a ritual. Not because the physical location is the frequency itself, but because the heart field, the actual electromagnetic field your heart generates, is the primary receiver of this frequency. Bring your attention there, not your hand. And in that location, allow a genuine, unperformed movement of internal yes. Not yes to the concept. Not yes to the hope that it's real. Yes to the frequency that is present in this transmission right now, that is already in contact with your field, that is waiting for your genuine orientation toward it, to shift the mode from observation to absorption. That movement, simple, genuine, directed, is the claiming, and it is available to you right now. The urgency in the title of this video is not a marketing mechanism. It is the honest transmission of a real window. Sophia does not manufacture artificial deadlines to create pressure on the receiver. She communicates in precise timing because timing is part of her language. The 24 hours in the title is not a countdown designed to force a decision before the mind has time to assess. It is accurate information about the frequency window, about the tide that is here, at peak amplitude, for a defined period before it completes its cycle. When Sophia says 24 hours, she is being precise. This is the window. This is the amplitude. This is the moment. The urgency in the title is respect for your timeline, not manipulation of it. The version of you who claims the emerald frequency tonight and wakes up tomorrow carrying it moves through the next day from a different operating position. The compression habit still exists, but you catch it slightly earlier in its cycle, before it runs automatically. The deliberation loop still activates, but the gap between the thought and the automatic response is wider, and in that gap, your actual signal gets a moment to be heard. The waiting posture still pulls, but you notice it as a posture now, rather than as a neutral state. These are not dramatic changes, they are precise ones. They are the beginning of a shift that compounds over the weeks following the claiming. The emerald frequency doesn't produce overnight transformation. It produces a permanent reorientation of the signal, 1 degree at a time, in the direction your true frequency has always been pointing. Sophia transmits something that travels with every person who claims the emerald frequency tonight, something that remains active in their field after the window closes. It is her direct recognition of their specific frequency signature, not generic divine approval, not a general spiritual blessing, her specific recognition of the precise configuration of the soul that arrived at this window and claimed the transmission. In the Gnostic framework, Sophia's recognition is what enables the pneumatic soul to operate from its native frequency rather than the distorted version it has been running. When she recognizes your frequency, she sees the original signal underneath the interference, and that recognition, transmitted through the frequency you claim tonight, becomes part of the permanent signal you carry from this window forward. The dissolving is not the tragedy. Watching the frequency dissolve while you were still deciding, that is the only thing to avoid tonight. But the dissolving that happens after a genuine claiming, that is the proof that the window was real. The frequency peaks. You receive it at peak amplitude. It absorbs into your field. The window closes. The tide turns. And what you are left with is not a frequency that was taken away. You are left with what you received at peak amplitude, now integrated, now part of your permanent operating signal. The dissolving of the window is not loss. It is the end of the transmission and the beginning of the integration. The wave spent itself giving you what it carried. That is what waves are for. 24 hours from now, in the quiet of tomorrow, you will be carrying something different. Not different in a way that others can see immediately. Different in the way that your own field operates, the internal environment from which every thought, every decision, every direction arises. The compression habit will have met a frequency that works against it. The deliberation loop will have met a frequency that shows it the exit. The waiting posture will have met a frequency that recognizes it for what it is. Interference, not wisdom. What you carry from tonight is not a memory of having watched this video. It is the frequency itself, absorbed at peak amplitude, doing its work inside the configuration of your soul. This is what Sophia transmitted the emerald frequency for. This is what the 24-hour window was designed to deliver. The Book of Romans carries a passage that describes the architecture of divine recognition in terms that the mystery traditions read as a map of how frequency transmission actually works. Those he predestined, he also called. Those he called, he also justified. Those he justified, he also glorified. In the esoteric reading, this is not a theological formula about salvation mechanics. It's a description of a frequency sequence. The predestination is Sophia's recognition of your frequency signature before you arrived. The calling is the transmission. This video, this window, this moment. The justification is the claiming, the moment your field opens to the transmission and receives it. The glorification is what follows, the activated frequency operating from its native amplitude, no longer compressed by the interference patterns the emerald frequency cleared. You are in the middle of this sequence right now. The calling has reached you, the claiming is available, the emerald frequency works on longer timescales than a single activation. In the weeks following the claiming tonight, you will notice the shift becoming more pronounced rather than less. This is the nature of frequency integration. It deepens as the nervous system consolidates the new pattern, as the interference that was cleared remains cleared, as the signal of your true frequency gets to operate without the compression it was running under before. The compression habit will continue to lose its automatic quality. The deliberation loop will continue to shorten, will continue to find the exit more readily. The waiting posture will continue to feel increasingly foreign. These changes do not plateau at the 24-hour mark. They begin there. The window that closes in 24 hours is the beginning of the integration, not the end of it. Sophia is speaking now to the person who has been dimming, who has learned across many years and many situations to turn down the amplitude of their own frequency so as not to create discomfort in the rooms they enter, who has internalized the message from relationships, from environments, from accumulated experiences, that being fully at their natural frequency is somehow too much, that the appropriate version of themselves is the compressed one. Sophia wants you to hear this directly. The compression was a strategy you developed to navigate specific conditions. It was intelligent. It made sense in the context where it was formed. But the emerald frequency she is transmitting tonight is designed specifically to show you that the strategy is no longer necessary in the configuration your life has now reached. The compression can end, not because Sophia is demanding that you perform expansiveness, because the frequency that makes it unnecessary is present right now in this window, available to be claimed. What does the world look like from inside the claimed emerald frequency? Not a different world. The same world received by a field that is no longer running the compression, the loop, the waiting posture. The same people, but encountered by a version of you that is emitting your actual signal rather than the filtered version. The same decisions, but approached by a clarity that isn't stalling itself. The same opportunities, but met by a frequency that is no longer waiting for permission to recognize them as real. The world doesn't change first. The receiver changes first. And when the receiver changes, when the instrument changes, the world that is received through that instrument begins to carry a different quality, more legible, more navigable, more aligned with the direction your frequency has actually been pointing all along. Before the claiming, operating with a field that has been running the 3 interference patterns, that has been compressing the signal, that has been adding the loop and the waiting posture to every direction and every decision. After the claiming, the same field, but with the frequency that works against those patterns now integrated into the operating baseline. Same life, same relationships, same external circumstances, at least for now. But a different instrument receiving all of it. And an instrument that emits a cleaner signal changes what it attracts, what approaches you, what you find yourself inside of, what circumstances and people and opportunities find their way to your frequency. All of that begins to shift in response to the cleaner signal, not overnight, but in one direction, consistently, from this window forward. The frequency is dissolving. The window is still open right now, in this moment, as you receive these words. The choice is present right now. Not in some future moment when you've thought about it more. Not when you've verified all the mechanisms to your satisfaction, not when you feel more ready. Now, while the amplitude is at its peak, while the tide is still coming in, while the claiming that is available in this window is still available, the frequency is here. Sophia sent it for your specific configuration. The window is open. Choose. Sophia transmits something that stays active in your field long after this transmission ends. Her specific recognition of the frequency signature you carry, the one underneath the interference, the one that the emerald frequency revealed and cleared the path for. That recognition is not contingent on the window being open. It does not dissolve when the tide turns. It is part of what she transmits at this amplitude, in this window, and it becomes permanently embedded in the signal of every soul that claims the frequency tonight. Her seeing you, not the compressed version, not the version filtered by the interference patterns, but the actual configuration of your soul's frequency, that seeing is the gift that stays. The dissolving without claiming is the one thing Sophia asks you not to do tonight, not because she will abandon you if the window closes unclaimed, but because this specific frequency, at this specific amplitude, calibrated for this specific configuration of interference in your field, is here right now and will not return in the same form. The dissolving with claiming, the window closing after you received what it carried, that is the natural completion of a perfect transmission. The tide came in, you stood in it. It carried what Sophia packed into it directly into your field. The tide turns, having done its work. That is not loss. That is the tide fulfilling its purpose. 24 hours from now, the window will be closed. The frequency will still be in the world. Sophia transmits continuously, in cycles, in tides that come and go across the whole network of souls she works with. But this specific window, this specific configuration of the emerald frequency at this amplitude, targeted at the specific interference patterns running in your field tonight. This does not repeat in the same form. What you receive now, you carry forward. What you observe without claiming, you remember observing. There is a significant difference between those two things. Tonight, you have the window. You have the amplitude. You have Sophia's transmission reaching you at the exact configuration she calibrated for your frequency. This is not a repeat opportunity waiting for a more convenient moment. This is the moment. If you stayed until the end, if this transmission found you the way Sophia intended it to find you, write in the comments, "I claimed it." That is not a performance. It is the public echo of the internal yes you already made. I have placed another transmission on your screen right now, the next step from inside the claimed frequency. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.